Hello, my name is Lauren Schuler. I'm an executive board member for Miles for Hips. In this series of patient interviews, I'm excited to introduce Sally Jacober Brown. Sally was born in New Jersey and went to great lengths to live anywhere else. Her moves have taken her to New York, Pennsylvania, California, Louisiana, and northern Brazil. In spite of all of that effort, she lives in New Jersey with her husband and has a total of six children, three grandchildren, and pets that include a cat with a club foot and a kitten with a heart murmur. And Miles for Hips is grateful to her for sharing her story with us. Thank you so much, Sally, for wanting to share your perspectives and your experiences.
Happy to be here, Lauren. Thank you.
You're welcome. To start, can you share what has been your biggest challenge related to hip dysplasia?
I think the biggest challenge was finding healthcare providers and particularly surgeons who understood what they were looking at and had some reasonable ideas about what could possibly be done given what there was to work with. I was born with my hips completely dislocated, and it wasn't picked up till I was 4.5. So there wasn't a whole lot to work with to start.
Absolutely. Can you talk about how that was kind of navigated even at that young age and even as you were growing up and continued to need hip care?
Sure. So pretty much I lucked out. We saw a orthopedic surgeon who he was very young. In fact, I think he had only been in practice for a couple years. And he looked at my x-rays and immediately went back to his faculty at Cornell to ask what he was looking at and what was possible to do. Um, so he did the best he could given what was there. I had osteotomies. Um, and they did fairly well for me over time. Unfortunately, it also went along with this idea that I was somehow fragile. My parents considered me, I wouldn't say unwell, but any kind of a physical activity was kind of looked on as dangerous. And that's unfortunate because of course that wasn't the case. As I got older, same kind of thing, finding surgeons who understood what they saw, had experience in managing what they saw, and had at least some basic communication skills. All of that was very challenging.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that a lot of people within the hip dysplasia community or people who have complex or chronic conditions, that's something that we all experience.
Hmm.
And so it's important to find that support and find those medical professionals who are willing to either learn about the condition or are willing to, find the right resources to get you the care that you need.
Hmm.
So, going off of that, what advice do you have for individuals with hip dysplasia or caregivers of hip dysplasia?
So I would say to folks who have hip dysplasia, first of all, you might not even know you have it. I've met so many younger women who didn't find out that was the root cause of some of their challenges until they were in their 20s. Um, and if you've got dysplasia, it changes the trajectory. It changes what's possible, and it really changes what makes sense. Um, so any old orthopedic surgeon is not going to be a very good resource, um, and in fact can do you harm unintentionally, but nonetheless harm. Um, when I started the adult portion of my journey, there really weren't any online resources, and I'm thrilled with how much is now available. Um, Even if you live in a relatively remote part of the world, you can at least connect through the internet and learn more about for yourself what dysplasia is and how that might make you different and special and unusual and not fitting the mold and not being like the grandmother who happens to live next door and is 85 years old and is having a primary hip replacement.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think that's something that I've noticed even in like the last 20 years for me is the amount of resources and information that we now have. And that is so important to how, we are understood and to how we're able to navigate our own
Hmm.
personal journeys.
Hmm.
So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Since you have had quite a long journey, can you tell us about a positive interaction with your surgeon or another healthcare professional along, your care with hip dysplasia?
So a more recent example, and I think this is also something that will happen to a number of us. Besides all of my hip surgeries, I'm up to, at this point, I've had 22. And I'll have, some number of additional ones going forward, and that won't be surprising to me. But um, every part of your body is affected by every other part of your body. So I also managed to tear a rotator cuff. I also managed to need a knee replacement and to have arthritis in my thumb. And the best part of getting treatment for a rotator cuff was finding out that the person who was doing the surgery actually had trained at Rothman in Philadelphia. And so he knew exactly what hip dysplasia was. He knew what a PAO was. Um, and he understood why I had a torn rotator cuff. And I, that was so different than showing up when I first moved to Philadelphia and went to a very, very well regarded institution. And I went to the chair of the department. And he looked at my x-ray, my hips, and said, wow, I hope we never have to go back in there. And the only thing that I could think of, well, you will not be going back in there. Someone
Right.
will be, but it won't be you. So I think we can't assume that sort of all of the effects of the hip dysplasia will be obvious. And sometimes we just have to say, this is what happens. This is how many decades I've spent taking non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. This is how many decades I've been using crutches or canes. Um, it's not that I suddenly have arthritis in my thumb. It's that year after year after decade, I've been using that thumb to enable me to live the kind of a life I wanted to live. And there's consequences.
Absolutely. When you had some of those other surgeries, like the rotator cuff tear, along your recovery process for that, were there any things that you did differently or that you accommodated in any way so that your body was not overly compensating, just given the, multiple areas of your body that have been affected in the past?
The only thing I can really point to is how valuable physical therapy is, and having a physical therapist who likewise has an understanding of our bodies and our humanity as a whole. I've been so fortunate to have some really wonderful physical therapists who were able to sort of look at everything and say, okay, um, this type of a crutch is not going to be your best friend. This would be probably a better one. How about if we try that and see how that works for you? Um, so I think that's the kind of thing, that kind of holistic. Probably everyone could benefit from it, but we really need it because we can't make forward progress without it.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Um, Thank you for sharing all of these
Mhm.
experiences. It really has been insightful, and I know that it will be helpful to the rest of the hip dysplasia community, even providers who might see this, just to understand, what it takes to care for an individual with hip dysplasia and other conditions that may be a result of that.
Mhm.
So I really thank you for taking the time for doing this, and it was a really great conversation.
Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate you.